Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well, and welcome to this update on Bitcoin. So in today's video, I just want to quickly cover the patterns I'm seeing here on the chart of Bitcoin, including the most recent movement in the price of Bitcoin here, and also bring into focus what this is potentially telling us here as well. Now, before we go into that, I just want to go on the weekly chart, the long-term chart of Bitcoin. So as I'm sure you know by now from my previous videos here, I've been saying now for several months, even as far back as the spring and the summer period, that I was looking for a break above this trend line pattern, this trend line here. And in fact, we finally broke this trend line to the upside. And this pattern here on the weekly charts, yeah, I have to tell you, this pattern on the weekly chart looks quite bullish for the long term. As you can see, we broke this trend line and held the 21 moving average on the weekly chart. So it does certainly look very good on the weekly charts, on the long-term charts. And I think the long-term potential for Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, as I've said this before in my previous videos, is at a minimum to retest the highs of 2019, probably by next year, and indeed move above this level. So again, I remain bullish for the long term, for the 6 to 12 month picture of Bitcoin. That is not the issue. The issue is the short-term picture. And that's the bit I have actually quite a lot of worries with and concerns. The short-term picture, if you look at the lower time frame charts like daily, 4-hourly, or hourly, they actually show a much more different picture. Okay, so it's important to actually divide the time frames you're watching. Okay, so you might have one perspective about the long term, but the short-term picture is actually quite different. So what can I say about the short-term picture over the next few weeks? Well, here's the bottom line. Notice, well, actually, before I come to this chart, I want to first of all bring this to your attention. A lot of the articles online right now, if you go and look at Bitcoin, for example, a lot of the most recent articles being written on Bitcoin are all on the same side of Bitcoin. They're all extremely bullish, as you can see here. For example, here, gold breaking down against Bitcoin is highly bullish for BTC. And this article over here says JP Morgan turns bullish on Bitcoin, citing potential long-term upside. By the way, just to say, the guys at Cointelegraph are fantastic. I love Cointelegraph. These guys produce great content. Bottom line is, guys, what I'm saying here is a lot of the sentiment has shifted quite extremely optimistic, or indeed extreme greed in Bitcoin, as you can see here from this particular index, which looks at the fear and greed sentiment on Bitcoin. And again, you can see right now we are on the extreme greed sentiment for Bitcoin, which again, whenever I see something like this, I personally do not like to get extremely bullish on Bitcoin or anything, in fact, when everybody else on the same side. So purely from a contrarian perspective, I don't like to get extremely bullish in the short term, that is, about Bitcoin. To me, something like this is a red flag, and we need to be careful. And here's the thing. So a lot of the folks out there, a lot of the people out there are becoming extremely bullish right when Bitcoin slams into this resistance trend line you're seeing here on my chart. We connect the highs here. By the way, if we also connect the lows, if we were to connect the lows here, okay, you will notice that, in fact, we've hit double resistance, maybe even triple resistance if you connect Fibonacci levels. So it does appear that Bitcoin is now hitting at least 2 levels of resistance here, okay, 2 trend line resistance levels. And from those levels, we've seen the price getting deflected, as you can see, getting rejected from that resistance in the, if you just zoom in here. By the way, you'll notice something else as well that Bitcoin has done. Bitcoin attempted today, on Sunday, it attempted to take out the highs it made last week, but it failed to do that. You will see it attempted, as a matter of fact, to get above the trend line today, and it failed. As a matter of fact, it also failed to get above the highs it made of last week as well. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, so what? What does that mean? Well, here's the thing. I interviewed Jack Schwager, the author of the famous book Market Wizards, recently. And in fact, Jack and I had a very interesting discussion about his recent book, Unknown Market Wizards. And here's what he said to me on Thursday evening. Listen to what he says over here, and we'll come back.
Patterns which, let's say something like a breakout or whatever, patterns which end up being a failed patterns, that the actual failure, in my experience, is a more reliable indicator than the classic pattern itself. So, for example, you take something like a breakout, a lot of breakouts fail, but I find that if anything, trading when you get a market breakout and there's no follow through after some period of time, you can define what that parameter is. That can itself be more indicative that the market is going to go opposite the breakout than the breakout itself was an indicator of a continued move. So
Yeah.
that's it.
All right, guys, as you heard there, Jack makes a very important point, which I think bears just mentioning it here in this particular video, which is that often when price, doesn't have to be Bitcoin, it could be any market, when price attempts to get above a major resistance level, like here would be this trend line, okay, this trend line resistance, okay, and also the recent highs. When it attempts to do that and it fails, often the failure to break out is more important than the actual pattern itself. So the pattern, as you can see here, yeah, you can say it's a triangular formation and a trend line. Okay, Bitcoin attempted last week to break above it. It failed. Then it failed again today. It tried to break out. It failed. You can see, if you just zoom in here on the chart. Let me bring this into focus. Today it attempted once again to get above the last week's highs and above the trend line. And you can see today the price bar went lower. It got rejected from that resistance. And as Jack said, what he learned through his own research was often when price tries to break out through a pattern like so, the failure to break out, the false breakout, is much more important than the actual pattern itself. So the pattern itself is not important. What matters is the failure of breaking out and following through the pattern. There was no follow through, by the way. You can see today, go on an hourly chart, for example. Yeah, you can see it's an hourly chart. And you can see what I mean here. Price attempted to get above the highs it made recently and got slammed down. So this failure and this potential false breakout could actually be a strong warning sign to bulls. All right, guys. So I personally, guys, listen, you guys know, as far as the long-term picture is concerned, as far as the multi-month, multi-year picture of Bitcoin, I mentioned this in previous videos. Yes, I remain bullish for the long term, for the next 6 to 12 months. And I think next year, very likely, we could be testing the 20,000, approximately 20,000 levels and potentially even higher on Bitcoin. However, as far as the short-term picture is concerned, I am not very confident here on Bitcoin. By the way, look at this. This shaded area, you're probably wondering what is the shaded area on the right-hand side of my chart. Well, it should come as no surprise to you. That is the election, post-election period. Okay, that's just after the election period. And I think this period, guys, is going to produce a lot of volatility. So I'm expecting a lot of volatility in this post-election few weeks here, and I don't think that's going to be good for either the stock markets or indeed Bitcoin. So I'm being extremely cautious at this point about that. So bottom line is this, guys. Here's the bottom line. The question we're asking is, have we started the next major wave 3 that's going to take us to potentially significantly higher levels? Are we now in the major wave 3 higher? And I have to tell you, at this particular point in time, at this point when we got extreme greed in the market, extreme greed in the sentiment readings, okay, and we're hitting resistance. Notice we're hitting resistance right there. Look at the 3-day chart, the same thing on the 3-day chart of Bitcoin. So given the fact we're hitting extreme greed with hitting resistance right there on the chart, and the failure to get above that resistance, to me, is a red flag. It's alarm bells ringing right there. This, to me, does not give me, at this point in time, strong confidence or a high confidence that we're in wave 3 of an uptrend. Not at this point. We need to get more information from the market. And at the moment, the market is not giving us. The market at this point is not giving us significant information to tell us that we're in the larger wave 3 uptrend that's going to take us potentially significantly higher. Okay, so I think we need to be patient here. I'm actually expecting a pullback. I think in the short term, Bitcoin at the very least could see a pullback to the averages on the charts. But at this point in time, I think it's a bit dangerous for me to follow the herd, follow the masses, and then say, oh yeah, definitely, yeah, Bitcoin is right now in the wave 3. We don't have enough information on that. Okay, so I would just say let's be patient and see what Bitcoin decides here. I will say this though. Let's go on a 3-day chart for a moment. So this is a 3-day chart of Bitcoin. Here's what I will say. So you can see that Bitcoin attempted to get above that trend line, but it failed. But I will say this, if Bitcoin does on the next attempt, let's say this week, I mean, just as an example, let's say this week Bitcoin tried once again to get above that trend line, breaks it successfully and closes above it, let's say we close above the trend line, then that would actually increase the probability for a test of the 2019 highs just near 14,000. That would increase the probability of that. But I have to tell you, right now, that is not my higher probability expectation. I don't think that's quite likely at this particular point in time. So I think a lot of the patterns and the false breakouts here are actually warnings. It's warning us to be cautious at this point. And again, in the short term, for the moment, right now, I'm expecting a pullback or retracement back to the averages. And then I'm going to wait for Bitcoin to give us more information as to which part of this potential wave count, okay, over here, we are at. All right, guys. So I think at the moment it's too early to call, but nonetheless, it's going to be very interesting indeed. Now, before I finish the video, let me just say a couple of things. Firstly, Jack Schwager's new book, Unknown Market Wizards, in my view, is probably one of the best books written on trading and chart analysis out there. So for those of you who are wondering what is a very good and important book to read on technical analysis and also trading as well, I would say Jack Schwager's book, Unknown Market Wizards, is a fantastic book right now. So you can go ahead and pre-order it on Amazon, for example. Bye for now.